Hey, everybody. It's Dana Robinson doing my weekly Thursday morning office hours, 9 a.m. Pacific time. As some of you know who've been following me, we're trying to bring on fun guests, people that, are themselves focused on something that we can all learn from. This morning, I have Dean Bokhari, who I met last year and who is like no other, a force of nature, a guy who has read every motivational book, 800 some odd motivational books and counting, summarized books and created summaries that people can learn from. So, a fantastic person who has kind of embraced what is motivation. And I thought we let's learn from the master. So, Dean, welcome.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Absolutely. So anyone who's hanging out with us here, you're welcome to hit the chat. And after this, I will drop a free LinkedIn Learning course of my choice into the feed as well. So anyone who clicks on that for the first day gets the course for free, even if they don't have LinkedIn Learning. And between now and the time we finish, Dean, I want to get your kind of personal to business journey if I can, because I know you as this kind of, I don't want to use the word guru, but a guy who's trying to master a subject matter, and you've built a business around it. But let's go back to before the BC time. Talk to me about, your, did you have a job at one point?
Yeah, I did. So that's really where my whole story begins. Is I used to work in marketing for the second largest tobacco company in the world. And I thought I would have that job as sort of a launch pad to help me while I was figuring out what I really wanted to do. And so I took the job right out of college, came out to California, and before I knew it, 2 years had passed, and then 3 years had passed, and then 4 years had passed, and I was getting promoted, and I was slowly putting on those golden handcuffs, so to speak. And it all kind of came to a head when I was in the middle of, I was in between meetings one day, and I remember pulling up to this office building, and it kind of all hit me. And I remember realizing, what am I doing here? Is this meaningful to me? Am I passionate about this? Is there some sort of purpose that I can find in this work that I'm doing, where I'm literally traveling from place to place and talking about tobacco, a product that literally kills 29 million plus people a year? Last time I checked the stats. So it all kind of came, it culminated, and all these emotions kind of rose up in me. And I remember breaking down in my car before the meeting and just having a total breakdown. It was some combination of like unfulfillment, disengagement, and just lack of purpose. And the next day, I walked in and I quit.
Wow.
And I would not suggest, by the way, to anybody to, if you're not fulfilled with your work, if you're disengaged at work, you're not finding it meaningful, I'm definitely not suggesting that you quit your job without finding something else to sustain you beforehand. So that was a huge mistake that I made. But on one hand, while I wouldn't suggest it to anybody else, I've got to be honest and say that I don't know if I would have figured things out for myself if I hadn't gone ahead
Hmm.
and quit, because it kind of forces you, because you're up against this wall, this brick wall, where you've got to be like, I've got to figure something out now. I quit the one thing that helps me pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so that's where I really started sort of hustling and trying to put things together. And one thing that I did know was that, number one, I loved learning new things. Number two, I loved sharing those things that I was learning with other people. And I had a knack for storytelling and speaking and sharing this kind of stuff with excitement, because I was genuinely pumped up about the stuff that I was learning when it comes to self-improvement, personal development, motivation, productivity, things of that nature.
Hmm.
And so I realized eventually that, hey, this is something that I could maybe turn into a career of my own. And before I knew it, I was getting invited to go and share ideas at different organizations and things of that nature. And that's where my speaking career began. And then, as far as the business that Dana was mentioning at the outset of this program, Flash Books, where I summarize different books and things of that nature. So around that same time, I was heavily into self-improvement books and business books because I'm trying to figure out what my own sort of purpose is going to be and how to find meaning with the work that I do, considering we spend like 60+% of our waking hours at work. So it better be something that fulfills us, or at least that we find engaging. And so I was trying to figure that out. And as I was doing that, I started sort of building up this Rolodex of notes that I was taking on different books. And I remember one day a buddy of mine asked me if I had my notes on this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I remember, I had them all like kind of organized in these Google Docs, with the title of the book and my notes. They're just bullets. And I said, yeah, I've got that. And I just sent him the link. And he sent that link to another friend of his, and his other friend sent that link to another friend of his. And before I knew it, people I didn't even know were reaching out to me for for book notes. And that's where I realized, you know what? I think I've got a business idea here. And that's how I launched Flash Books. And, slowly but surely, of course, it wasn't easy. There was a lot of struggle there. But slowly but surely, things started coming together for me, and I ended up creating 2 businesses out of that situation. But again, it wasn't easy. There was quite a bit of struggle there, and one thing that I vividly remember that I'll never forget was at the very beginning. It was shortly after I quit my job, and I remember thinking, uh, 3 months. I've got 3 months of wages saved up. I'll be okay. I'll figure it out, and I'll be, on my feet in no time. Well, a year later, I still,
Yeah.
I still hadn't figured it out. And I remember sitting there one day with my laptop in my 1 bedroom, apartment. And I'd just gotten married on top of it all. And I'm like freaking out. I'm trying to figure out like how am I going to pay some of these different bills? How am I going to pay the rent? And blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, everything shuts down. The electricity had shut down. It got shut
Mm.
off. Why?
Oh, the bill didn't get paid, did it?
I couldn't pay the bill.
Oh my gosh.
But as stressful and as painful and emotionally distressing that situation was, I look back on it fondly today, and I look back on it with gratitude today because it keeps me humble, man, and it reminds me that nothing is free. You gotta there's something that you want, you've got a dream or a goal or something you're ambitious about. You got to figure out the price, and then you got to pay it.
Mm.
And I figured out that price, and I paid the price over and over and over again until eventually, I was able to build something for myself. So that's a
So
little backstory.
I love it. Thank you. I want to get to the core of motivation, and clearly you had to keep that going. Like you couldn't give up. But to what extent do you think your job gave you some skills that I have this theory, at least, that most people think at a job think the job sucks and they just do the minimum and they get out of there, and then they're like, oh, how do I become self-employed? When most entrepreneurs I meet were like, well, I had this job where I learned something really useful, and then when I finally got out there, whether it's like oops, I quit and now I need to find it, or they simply step out of work and do something that they've gained at their job. Did your job give you some skills?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I would say that, even if you're in a job right now that you don't like or that you don't find fulfilling, look for that silver lining, that skill that you could maybe develop and enhance to the best of your ability that you can then leverage outside of that job once you leave it,
Yeah.
whatever that is. Because for me it was really realizing that I had a knack for teaching and speaking and sharing ideas, because that was a large part of my role at that
Mm.
corporate job. And so, that was one big thing that I picked up, and it allowed me to hone those skills, and it allowed me to kind of practice those skills on a regular basis. The only difference is that, I wasn't talking about something that I had any sort of emotion for or joy behind. I wasn't engaged about the topic that I was talking about. It's tobacco. How engaged can you be?
Right.
So, but yeah, training others, teaching, speaking, sharing ideas, those skills really, I developed those skills a lot, and I practiced those skills at that job.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the book that I'm pumping right now for myself is The King's Fly Swatter, and the theory is you got a really crappy job swatting flies behind the king, and eventually, if you just do that well, and then start listening to the king, you become the wise guy, and
Yeah.
eventually that gives you agency to move up and out and have control of your life. So I love teasing that out of people because I just find it to be a truism. And you could have had a plan to stay longer and extract more skills, and that might have given you a little bit softer landing. But let's come back to, how do you stay motivated for a year when your electricity is getting shut off and you're not making any money? You've now learned motivation. Were you learning that at the time and just like get up every day and just go, you know, full ham on the world, not knowing how you're going to pay your bills?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I that's what I call motivation by necessity. You really have no other choice, because I burned the bridges, right? And I had no choice. But what I would suggest for, some motivational skills that I use right now are, number one, I think that the biggest thing that people struggle with when it comes to motivation is that a lot of folks think, I got to feel motivated. I need to feel inspiration. Maybe an idea needs to come around, a person needs to come around and motivate me. I need to watch a YouTube video or a TED talk or something, and then get motivated, and then I'll be able to do what it is that I got to do. Well, it turns out that it doesn't work that way at all. Like, that's not how motivation works. And that kind of led me to create what I call this principle called the action first principle, which tells us that motivation doesn't come before action. In fact, action leads to motivation. So
Mm.
if you want to get motivated, start moving, right? Start taking action towards whatever it is that you want to do that you're not motivated for. Just pretend like you're motivated and just start taking action. And then you'll notice the motivation slowly bubbling up naturally. And you'll notice that it starts to come up, and it starts to continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger as you take action. But the problem is, most people never take that first step. They don't take action because they think that they need to feel motivated first. But
Mm.
no, action comes first, motivation follows. So that's one big thing that I would say. That's the number one thing to keep in mind about motivation.
And I feel like there's a lot of books about motivation. You think the theme was the same, and everybody kind of has a different like process angle? The 7 steps, the 5 things, the what? Is that the core of each motivational book?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, we're all kind of rehashing the same pie here.
Yeah.
Um, It's just that they're said and repeated in different ways. The ideas are presented in different ways. But, and of course, not every book out there is accurate. There's also a lot of, poorly written books out there. And you gotta figure out which ones those are. And also I approach all these ideas with an open mind, and I'm always willing to try them out, right? Because sometimes you might stumble upon this unproven principle, some crazy idea, and you give it a shot and you realize, hey, this works for me.
Hmm.
And so if it works for you, then continue using it, right? And so, yeah, but there are a lot of commonalities. It's just everybody's got their own style, and everybody presents their ideas in a different way. And so you just got to figure out what connects with you.
And for you, I mean, you've had enough of this to then sort of kind of develop your own. I mean,
Yeah.
how would you characterize, like, what's the Dean Bokhari method for motivation?
I would say no, number one, always start with the action first principle, which is if you've got something that you want to do, don't wait around for the motivation, but instead take action and the motivation will follow. Number two, I would say to be as clear and specific as possible with the goals that you set for yourself. A lot of times, folks say that they've got these huge dreams and they say that they've got all these different things that they want to do, and that's wonderful. I would suggest to every human being on this planet to dream as big as possible, but to remember that you got to follow those dreams up with action or else they're not going to come true. They
Yeah.
won't come to fruition. And the way to do that is to sit down with a pen and a pad and write out a list of clear, specific goals. That is the one theme that every single book on self-improvement and motivation, includes. And that is set clear and specific goals.
Mm,
How it's not enough to just want to be rich. How rich do you want to be? It's not enough to just want a job that you're passionate about. What kind of job is it that you want? What specific role do you want? How far up the ladder do you want to climb?
mm,
Right? And so be as specific as possible with the goals that you set for yourself. And then thirdly, I would say that there's a great business philosopher and author, motivational speaker named Zig Ziglar,
mhm.
who passed away some years ago that I personally have been tremendously inspired by. And he always used to say that, motivation it's like a bath. You've got to repeat it daily. And
Yeah.
so, I couldn't agree more, and so because motivation, the nature of motivation is temporary. If we want to sustain our motivation, right, to make it last, we've got to turn our motivation into a habit.
Mm,
So, when you turn something into a habit, it you no longer need to use willpower. You no longer need to use energy and discipline. You just need to use it a little bit in the beginning for a
mhm.
set amount of time until things become automatic and things become sort of, you know, second nature to you. You don't have to think about it. There's less effort involved. There's no more willpower involved. You just get up and you do it, just like brushing your teeth every morning. We don't think about the exact steps of how many strokes and how much tooth, but we don't think about all that. We just get up and do it.
Right.
And so that's a very, very simple example of the power of habit. It allows you to do things and put them on autopilot instead of
Mm.
having to use motivation and willpower and discipline. And so you got to use a little bit of upfront discipline. Let's say you want the motivation to contact 30 potential clients every day for the next couple of weeks. I'm just thinking off the top of my head
Yeah,
here.
that's a good example. Love it.
And so of course there's going to be some nervousness involved, there's going to be some anxiety, there's going to be some fear perhaps, and you're going to stumble a bit in the beginning, but you need to muster up that courage, you got to muster up that energy and discipline and get down to it. And what you notice is that once you start making a few of those phone calls, you become a little bit more comfortable and the motivation starts to bubble up. That's the action first principle at work there. You weren't motivated, you pushed yourself to do it anyway, and you started making those phone calls, 4 calls in. Now you're feeling comfortable. Now you
Mm,
feel relaxed, and now it feels automatic. Now repeat that over and over and over again for a set amount of days, and maybe a few weeks later, it'll be natural for you to get up in the morning, call 30 clients a day, crank them out. And I mean, calling 30 clients a day, you'll change your financial situation too shortly after that. You keep
yeah.
that up.
Yeah. I love that. So, do you think what you're basically saying is that you have to have, once you have a plan, you say, I'm a realtor, I need to make a sale a month. Then you set a goal and you say, then to make a sale a month, I need to contact 1,000 people. That's 30 people a day. It's 33, I guess, depending on the month. and then you do, and by putting it down and saying every day I will do this, the motivation follows. So you basically have the action mapped out. You say I got to call 30 people a day if I'm going to make one transaction in a given month. That's a
Right.
thousand touches to get to one. The thousand touches sounds like you're eating an elephant, right? It sounds, if you told some realtor, have you done your thousand calls? That would
Yeah,
that would be demotivating, right? That so
absolutely.
so many people that are consultants, a realtor is a great example because it's a tough time for realtors, and they were having stuff fall in their lap 2 3 years ago, and 2/3 of licensees in California have given up their license in the last year, and I talk to people that are killing it, and it's a matter of the motivation, but it's not sitting around waiting for something to happen.
Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't agree more, Dana. And also, there's a certain characteristic, a feature that I've noticed in anyone who's, been tremendously successful. And everybody's got their own unique definition of success, right? Everybody has their own idea of what success means. But when the people that I know, the people that I've worked with, the people that I've learned from that have achieved their definition of success have all been comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Hmm.
right? So it's very uncomfortable to do something extraordinary. But if you know that that discomfort is going to lead to something greater for yourself, then it's about being willing to pay the price, like we mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah, so that's another discipline, is to say, I'm going to do this uncomfortable thing until it's not uncomfortable. And then it can, and again, like the sort of mental feedback is there, isn't it?
Yep.
You do something that's a challenge, you usually feel good after you do it. And then when you see some fruit that comes from that, then it's a lot easier to lean into that.
Absolutely.
What do you think of I'm a fan of Napoleon Hill and all of that, but I
Love
also
it.
have met so many people who have the sort of like no action, right? So they think thoughts are things, right? You have something in your head, you can picture a gadget, right? There's a thought, it's
Yeah.
invisible, it has no mass, it's in my head, and that thought can become a thing. But to give birth to that thing, I've got to take action, right? I actually have to think, well, how will I, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
create that?
There's a lot of folks like talking about manifesting things these
Mhm.
days, and that's wonderful, but I think that it's almost even like uh, tarnishing the term
Mm.
of manifesting, because it's not just you just sit on a hill, take a few deep breaths, and then poof, like you can't just repeat a few affirmations, and think about what you want and not do anything.
Yeah.
You got to back it up with action. Every thought. The reason why what we think about becomes our reality is because the more we think about what we want, the more it's at the forefront of our brain, right?
Yeah.
And when something is when it's front and center, when we're always thinking about it, well, then we're noticing it more in our environment. Just like when you get a new car, all of a sudden, bam, you start to notice that that car is all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So, that's our reticular activating system at work, the RAS. It's a part of the brain that people are really talking about when they're talking about thoughts or things, and manifesting, and positive thinking and things of that nature. And it's all beautiful, and it's all effective. It's
Mhm.
just you got to make sure you take action.
I love it. So the what do you think in terms of someone who's trying to figure out that they've read some books, they're trying to get their business up to the next level, they're stuck in the mire, they're at a job and they keep thinking, I really need to just walk in and quit, right? they're they're stuck, and I feel like I've known some of these people and they've read some books. What do you think is what's an aha maybe that can help people go, oh, I'm missing, there's something that I'm missing.
Yeah. Here's something that a lot of folks get stuck with is, you know, um, I know some folks who will go back to business school and get another degree
Okay. Love it.
because they're afraid, because the reality is and they might never admit it, is that they're afraid, or they're, uncomfortable with just doing it, just starting their
Mhm.
own business, right? So they say, you know what, I need to learn more. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
back. I'm going to go back to business school. I'm going to get an MBA, and then I'm going to go out there and I'm going to crush it, right? They get their MBA. They say, okay, you know what, I need to go and get another degree because I'm not ready to do this yet. This is a technical industry. I'm going to go back and learn more. And the cycle continues, and before you know it, 20 years have gone by, and you've got all this education, but nothing to show for it. And in a lot of ways, a lot of folks do this, where we get into this analysis paralysis. We'll just do all this research. I got to Google more. I need to learn more. I got to research more and read more books. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to get out there and just do it. Just take that one idea that you learned and
Mhm.
apply it. I
Yeah.
was at I was at a seminar a few years ago, and it was, eh, I mean, it was a $1,500 per ticket seminar. And, this guy that's sitting next to me, I mean, we're like 45 minutes into the seminar, and he just gets up and he leaves. And when we take our break, I see him in the hall, and he hadn't even come back in. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why'd you leave? And he goes, well, when you get a good idea, you got to take action on it immediately. So he was like, that $1,500 was totally worth it for this one aha moment that I got. So now I'm going to go and apply this, right?
Yeah.
And I'll come back to this later. I can take this seminar again later. I don't mind. But I got this golden nugget. So now I need to apply it. And it was worth every penny. Took his 45 minutes. He got that one idea and he went straight to application, straight to action. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would suggest to anybody that has maybe read a handful of books, applied a handful of ideas, made some improvements for themselves, but really wants to take their career or their professional life to the next level is, you know, take that one standout idea that you can really connect with and go apply it, go and execute, and
Yeah.
then pick up another one and do it again. That's
Uh,
all.
I love that. Let me draw one thing out of what you just said, because I think it's a thing that I missed early in some of my ventures. That's getting around other people. So you paid for the seminar. Uh, Most great seminars, workshops, masterminds, even are something that's going to cost. And for someone who's new to entrepreneurship, for example, or trying to figure out even how do you get out of your job? You have a job right now. I bet you can join the best practice groups, or go to the workshops, or join the association, and act like you own that business. Act like you
Yeah.
do now, because you're then going to begin noticing everything and embracing the skills that are required to become a business owner. That seminar as an example, what other things can you think of that get people who want to execute around other people? Because I think that creates a sort of culture of execution, and shows you all the things you didn't know, and you see
Yeah.
other people and you have those aha moments and you get those golden nuggets.
Yeah, for sure. I would suggest, I definitely find a like-minded peer group, other folks who want to do what you want to do, and you can feed off of one another. You can bounce ideas off of each other. You can learn from each other. And I think that as long as it's a supportive group, of people, of like-minded people, I mean, you can really make magic happen. And then, Dana, did you mention the acting as if sort of bit
Yeah,
there a moment
well,
ago?
in
Yeah,
your job, I mean,
yeah,
it's, I think of it as a way that, when I was a lawyer, I acted as if that was my firm, and that
yeah,
brought great value to the law firm, because it's their business and their clients. And then when I go out on my own, it was a much easier transition, and I've actually gone back to have jobs and say, like, I'm here to extract skills and learn, and the only way I can do that is if I act like I'm the boss, whether I am or
yeah.
not.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really powerful idea, man. Because that when you act like what you want, right? When you are acting as if you already closed the deal. You already are running the company. You already have founded your own business. If you're acting like that, it brings up feelings of power. And research has shown this. There are studies on this, um, where when you've got that feeling, when you feel more powerful, it boosts your confidence. And when you feel more confident, you're more readily available to go out there and do those things that maybe you may not have done otherwise. And I understand that a lot of folks don't like to call it to act as if. And
Mhm.
so, one thing that I always say is, instead of faking it till you make it, then faith it till you make it,
Mm.
because then it's about believing in yourself. It's about believing in your capabilities. So, yeah.
I feel like imposter syndrome holds people back, and I always say, that I feel like if I don't have a little imposter syndrome, I'm not stretching, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
do something that's beyond. I'm in private equity, and I'm surrounded by people with MBAs from Ivy League schools. I don't deserve to be at those tables, but I act as if, and I
Yeah.
don't always feel like I fit in with someone who's a elegant spreadsheet jockey, went to Wharton. uh so imposter syndrome can hold people back because they just get stuck behind it, and instead of embracing it.
Yeah, I absolutely, without a doubt. And one thing I can say is that I think everybody battles with imposter syndrome at a certain point, and if you're not battling with it, then either you don't care enough, or you're not stretching yourself enough. And there's a great book called Mastery by Robert Greene, and in the book, he actually talks about one of the qualities of masters of any industry, people who have accomplished this elusive quality called mastery, where one of their qualities is that they're constantly questioning themselves. They're constantly questioning their capabilities. Am I good enough? Is this the right way to do this? Am I even going to, succeed at this? And those questions that they're asking, I mean, essentially that's imposter syndrome right there. I mean, when
Yeah,
you're questioning your capabilities, that's imposter syndrome. But, you know, it can be a beautiful thing if you look at it from that perspective, where you say, okay, am I going to be able to do this? Can I do this? But then
mhm.
you still go out there and do it anyway, right? You learn from that experience. I think it's very powerful.
I love it. And back to your original point, if you're not doing, then you're not getting motivation. You do first,
No doubt
and
about it.
step out in faith in yourself, and faith in the process, faith that
Mhm.
if every motivational book says take action and the motivation will follow, then you've got to step out in that faith that what everybody's saying is really true.
No doubt about it.
I love it. Dean, thanks for coming to Office Hours. Everybody who's listening, before, during, and after, connect with me at hello@danarobinson.com. Dean, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Come on over to deanbokhari.com. That's DeanBokhari.com.
Awesome. I'm going to drop a course in the comments. I'm thinking we go with networking courses, because I think if you've got a job, you want to take action. Some of that starts with just getting out and creating community. And I've got some great courses on that. Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dana.